I'm Abigail. This is Will, and welcome to another Two Kids interview.
We are joined by Caldecott medal-winning author and illustrator Matthew Cordell.
Mr. Cordell's books include Troublegum, the Hope series, the Cornbread and Poppy series, Hello Neighbor,
Bear Island, Another Brother, Explorers, Hello a Hello, Evergreen,
and the Caldecott medal-winning book, Wolf in the Snow.
He has also illustrated many books as well. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Which part do you enjoy more? The writing or the illustrating?
Oh, I think I probably prefer the illustrating side more just because I am a lifelong artist. I've loved to draw my whole life. So I'm much more comfortable as an illustrator, as an artist, as someone who loves to draw. I'm getting like a thumbs up and a thumbs down. What's happening? One of you likes to draw, one of you does not, apparently.
To draw. I've loved to draw my whole entire life.
I write as a
okay.
hobby. I just never has written a book with a single picture.
Okay. But I do love to write too, though. So now, can I get a thumbs up for the writing side?
Yes.
I was an illustrator first. I was illustrating for years, and then I wanted to be able to write something of my own and illustrate it. So it took me several years to figure out how best to do that and how to be a better writer and work on it, and lots of bad writing in those early years, but eventually getting published as both an author and an illustrator. But I think I do like to draw. I think that's my favorite thing to do. Yeah.
That's probably why we make comics together so well, because I like to draw and he likes to write.
That's cool.
Is it true that becoming a picture book and illustrator was not your idea?
That is true. Yeah. So my wife, Julie, she's a lifelong writer. She loves to write. And I was making pictures, but not for a young audience like you guys. I was drawing and painting, and my work was in art galleries and things in the Chicago area. And I was kind of looking for something new. I didn't love what I was doing, and I wanted to still be able to draw and be creative. And Julie was writing things, and she suggested that she could try to write a picture book, a story, and then I could try to come up with some pictures and we could try to get it published. And that was a long time ago. That was back in like that ended up becoming a book. It was called Toby and the Snowflakes. And it was published in 2004, so a long time ago. And so really it was all Julie's doing. And once I sort of discovered the world of children's books, I loved it so much, and I've been wanting to do it ever since. So I'm really grateful to Julie for showing me the way.
Have your kids influenced your books in any way?
My kids? Oh yeah, all the time. So I feel like I've become a better writer and an artist when I became a dad, because I was just sort of more around young people again. I hadn't been around children for so long, and my kids just make me laugh so much, and they say such interesting things, and they're a bit older than you guys now. Well, actually no, my son is 10, so he's about you guys are about 10, right?
Yes. In fact, they turn 11 Saturday.
Oh, nice. So I guess I'm thinking more of my daughter, who's 14, but I just get so many great ideas. A lot of my books that I've written and illustrated have been directly inspired by things that have happened in my family or with my kids. I did a book called King Alice, which was about a dad and a daughter who make a book together on a snow day. And that was really inspired by Romy, who was, younger at the time when I wrote that book. But it was inspired by a time when the two of us made a book together, and sort of the little adventure that we had when we took a day and made that book together.
Can you tell us what you love about Mr. Rogers?
Do you guys know who Mr. Rogers is? Mr. Rogers was, when I was growing up, Mr. Rogers was he had this really popular children's television program. So I grew up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and loved it very much when I was a child. And then when I became a dad and I was watching it again with my own kids, I grew to love him again, sort of in different ways as an adult. And he just had so much love and respect for children and wanted to help them and talk them through, things that are difficult about childhood where we're trying to figure things out. And there's a lot of new things that we're exposed to when we're young children. And so he was kind of a hero in that way, and that he loved children so much and wanted to help them so much. And he also talked to children just sort of like we're talking now, just in a very natural, normal voice and way. And I love that about him too. So just a really great man. So if you don't know
Uh,
Mr. Rogers, check out my book Hello Neighbor, which talks all about him.
we actually live very close to each other. Every summer, I go to the Bristol Renaissance Fair. You seem like a person who would go there too. Have you been there? And if so, what is your favorite part?
Yes, you're right. So my family, we do love the Renaissance Fair. We're actually where the town that we live in is actually, I think, a bit closer to it than you guys. So we there were some summers that we would go there many times in a year, just because it was so close to us and it was nice and convenient. I We always loved the people that dress up and talk in all the sort of old English ways, and the knights and the what just all the interesting characters. But my favorite part, there used is not there anymore, but there used to be this couple, a man and a woman, who were falconers. So they had these trained birds that they would had this show with. It was in the where the knights have their jousting show, but they would have these birds that would kind of dive for food and stuff. And it was called the Royal Falconer. That was my favorite part. But I think they haven't been there the last couple of years. I mean, hope maybe they'll come back next summer. But that's my favorite part.
In your books that have words, what comes first, the pictures or the words?
The words, yeah. So I like to have a finished story before I draw a lot of pictures, but so almost always I write a story first and have that idea sort of finished, or at least the first version of it. And then I start to kind of make pictures that go along with the words. But sometimes, every once in a while, I will draw a picture that doesn't have a story, and then I will think like, I like this picture a lot, and I wonder if I could come up with a story based on this picture. So that's happened to me maybe two or three times, but most of the time I'm writing first and then illustrating second.
It's a very personal book for you. It seems to be as much for adults as kids. Can you talk to us about that?
Which book did you say?
Wish.
Wish, yeah. So Wish was inspired by my family and my how my family got started. My wife and I were married for many years before we had children of our own, before we had a family. And we wanted to be a mom and a dad, but it didn't happen right away for us. So there was a lot of waiting and expectations and sort of it was difficult. It was a difficult time for us. And I know there are a lot of other families that got started like this same way, with a lot of waiting and uncertainty, not knowing if you're going to be a mom or your dad, and despite wanting to be. That's the thing we wanted the most. So I ended up writing a story about that, so families that have been through that similar experience could share that with themselves and with their own children. So it was a very personal experience, and one that was really important to me. So I was glad to be able to make that book.
Can you tell us about the research that goes into writing a picture book?
Yeah, so not all picture books require research. Some of them that are about actual periods in history or real people, or if you want to write a fictional story that's based in reality, all of these things will require some amount of research. So you want to make sure it's as real and accurate and fair as it could be. For instance, my book Wolf in the Snow was fiction, but I wanted the wolves to be depicted very realistically in their behaviors and the way that they acted around each other and around humans. So I did a lot of reading, a lot of nonfiction books about wolves. I watched a lot of nature specials and documentaries about wolves, and I also reached out to scientists that specialize in wolves. So that book, even though it wasn't nonfiction, it did require a lot of research in that way. My book, Hello Neighbor, which is based on a real person, that required a lot of research as well. And because I was talking about a real person who had lived a real life and I wanted all the facts to be correct. So I went to where he was from in Pittsburgh, Mr. Rogers, and I spoke with a lot of people that he worked with and knew very well and was able to get their interviewed them and talked to them a lot and wanted to make sure, showed them all the sketches I was working on and the story as I was writing it to make sure that everything was just right, because I wanted everything to be as good as it could be, because I really had so much respect and love for Mr. Rogers that I wanted to put that same amount of love and respect into the book about him. So some books do require quite a bit of work before you can actually get started on the creative side.
You started with picture books, and then you wrote the Cornbread and Poppy series for young readers. Would you ever try a middle grade novel, please?
Good question. I would love to actually write something longer, and I haven't done that yet, but I have sort of an idea for a middle grade chapter book sort of in the back of my head that would have illustrations. So it wouldn't be as illustrated as a picture book or even as many illustrations as Cornbread and Poppy beginning reader chapter books. This would be more like hundreds of pages of text, so more words, and maybe an illustration every 3 or 4 pages, something like that. So I have an idea. I just need to find the time to start working on it. But I would love to write a middle grade novel someday.
Those are also my favorite kind of books, but what are you thinking? We can tell you if it's a good idea.
Well, I don't want to talk too much about it yet, just because I don't want to jinx myself. I don't want to sabotage myself, and then just kind of give it time to work its way out in my head before I start to talk about it.
One question about it though. Is it about dinosaurs at all?
No, it's not about dinosaurs, but it would have animal characters, and it would be not set uh, that far back in history.
We've interviewed a number of authors who've had books banned.
That means in those places, kids don't have the same access to books that we have, and may not be able to see themselves represented in books.
Can you can you give us your thoughts on this?
So that there is a lot of that happening right now, and it's unfortunate because I feel like the books that some people are don't want to be in libraries are the books that some kids really need to see. They need to see themselves represented in stories and in pictures and things that were important to their own history before they were born, and why their lives are like they are. And these are all very important things, and all children should be represented and have books that they can look to learn about themselves and to share with others and share their stories with others. So I really think it's sad that some people don't want kids to have those stories. I understand that some parents are they don't want their kids to read certain things about certain topics, but there are other kids and other families that need those books. So I think while it's certainly reasonable for parents to not allow their children to read certain books, I don't think it's very fair at all for a small number of parents to not allow many children to have access to those books. So I hope that things change in the other direction and become more open and reasonable as the years move forward.
We agree.
And picture books being so short, is it hard to convey the message you want?
It can be. So usually what I do when I write a picture book story is I write a really long story. And then when I go back and read it, I realize that the pictures are also telling the story. So you don't have to have every word that's describing what's happening in the story, because the pictures are also helping with that. So you end up taking a lot of words out because you don't really need both things to happen at the same time. So there's this really fun sort of combination that happens when you are telling stories with words and pictures, where you can kind of figure out what part is best told with the pictures and what part is best told with the words. And it's this fun sort of puzzle that kind of gets put together as one is working on a picture book. And picture books to me are just one of the most interesting formats of storytelling because for that reason, for the words and the pictures working together in different ways, but also because picture books are read by both young readers like you guys and by young readers' parents or their guardians or their grown-ups. So you have to kind of think about both of these very different ages as you're making these books. So I just think picture books are really amazing things to create and work on and try to make work well.
Rejection is a part of most writers' journeys. Can you tell us about that part of your journey?
Yeah, there. So anytime you do something creative, I think you're opening yourself up to people either liking what you do or not liking it, and you kind of have to prepare yourself for uh, some criticism, you know. And so that's definitely a part of my job every day. I have to think about, you know, readers might not like the books that I'm working on, but also the publishing companies. If I send them a story idea or I send them sketches that are for a story that I'm working on, there's going to be suggestions, there's going to be criticism, there's going to be things that I have to hear that I might not want to hear. But I think the good thing about that is that it often makes you a better person, a better creator, to hear other people's perspectives. If you're just making something and everyone loves it, you know, you don't really ever change, you don't really grow. But if you get these sort of notes from other people, you will find out there's different ways to make things. There's maybe better ways to make things. And sometimes you will hear a flat out no, or you know, it's just I don't like this, and if you fully believe in what you're doing and what that project is, you can try it with someone else who has a different opinion. So, you know, rejection and criticism definitely part of writing and drawing, and you just kind of have to kind of have to prepare yourself. And as the years go on, it doesn't bother you quite as much as it did in the very beginning. But it's all part of growing as an artist to hear those kind of things, I think.
Exactly where you were and your reaction when you found out you were a Caldecott medal winning author.
Yeah, so that was one of the most exciting times of my career, because a lot of illustrators of children's books in America think about one day maybe I could win or one of my books could win the Caldecott medal. And the way that you find out is after the end of the year, a committee of a small number of librarians and they get together at a librarian conference at the end of the year. Well, that's actually the beginning of the following year, and they talk about all the books that were published throughout the year, and they narrow it down to just a few, just a handful. And from that handful, they decide what book is the best, in their mind, what is the best illustrated. And then, you know, there can be 4 or 5 or so uh, Caldecott honor books, which are kind of like the silver medal, essentially. But no one knows what those books are going to be until the same day. Like none of us illustrators know that we even stand a chance with that committee until the same day that everyone else finds out. So, but we do find out first. And what happened was the night before, I knew that what would happen is the way you find out is someone calls your house really early in the morning. So the night before, I was wondering, you know, is there any way I might win this? I was very nervous about it, really. And then my phone rang very early in the morning. I was already awake because I was having trouble sleeping, and a woman on the other end of the phone said that she was with the Caldecott committee and that Wolf in the Snow won the 2018 Caldecott medal. And that's how I found out right then and there. And I was very excited, but I couldn't tell anyone for a few more hours because it was only I knew, and the committee knew, and like a few other people at the publishing company knew. So I had to keep it a secret. So it was on a school day, and so my wife and I, we kind of kept our kids home from school that morning so we could all see the announcement when it was released to the public. And we just hung out that morning and watched it on our TV, and just it was a big celebration from that point on. So it was very exciting, and it was a big surprise. And it was the same kind of surprise for me as it was just as much anyone else because I had no idea. There wasn't like like some awards you get like nominated, but you don't know for the Caldecott. It could be anyone who could win the Caldecott. So it was a big
Actually,
surprise.
actually, we were in kindergarten then.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that was quite a few years ago
Um,
then.
can you tell us your thoughts and if you are concerned about all the AI and its future impact on publishing?
Wow, that's a good question. So there's a lot of talk about that right now. People using computer software uh, to either make pictures or even to make writing. And I think I don't even work digitally as an illustrator. I still work with traditional materials. I still use paper and pencils and pen and ink and all those kind of things. I don't really like using computers a whole lot to be creative. I just like sort of the old fashioned way of writing and drawing. And I mean, I do type out my stories on a computer, but I don't use the computer as a tool very much in terms of helping me to create the actual art. And so I I don't really like the idea of computers taking over and doing the things that humans do. I think I don't. It's hard to believe that someday computers could be the thing that we all want to see in terms of making, books and television shows. And I feel like it wouldn't have as much personality if a computer is doing it as it would an actual person or group of people. So I still feel sort of optimistic that it's not going to be this massive thing that takes over the whole creative world. But it is kind of frustrating that some people might want to use computers and AI to save money. And companies might be looking at that or thinking about that as ways to save money is not paying people. That's very frustrating to me because um, I think people that make things should be paid, and they should be able to live their lives and take care of their families with those salaries and those monies. And so it upsets me to hear about AI and that it's kind of growing and things, but I'm not totally convinced that it's going to take over. So just trying to be reasonable about it.
Yeah, I'd probably be happy if robots never ever ruled publishing or the world at all.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
just hope that doesn't happen for like another 70 billion years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least. Like both of us, you are a big Star Wars fan. Any
Oh.
chance you ever write a Star Wars picture book? Maybe a Grogu one?
Oh, Grogu. Yeah, Grogu. Yeah, Grogu's great.
I, I can tell you like Rogue One because of the KO action figure over there.
Yeah, yeah, I've got a lot of Star Wars stuff. I'm in my studio, my office right now, and I have a lot of Star Wars things around me. Yeah, I love Star Wars. I grew up watching the original Star Wars movies. And so I have this kind of soft spot for all things Star Wars, and I love all the shows and stuff they're making now. And I sort of have looked into maybe doing something Star Wars related for picture books. And I talked to a publisher about doing it, and we haven't gotten super far with it, but it is something I've sort of thought about, and I've actually pitched. I've sort of submitted some ideas about what might be a good Star Wars picture book. So we'll see if it happens. It's not very far along, but I would love to draw Star Wars characters in a picture book, because I love those characters so much, and I just love all the world of all the Star Wars characters. So it'd be a lot of fun to draw.
What writer or illustrator has had the most influence?
I think one of my most favorite authors and illustrators is a man who's no longer alive. His name was William Steig, and he did a lot of cartoons, not cartoons, but comics, not animated cartoons, but he did a lot of early in his career, and then later in his life, he started making picture books. And one of my very favorite picture books of all time was one of his books, and it actually won the Caldecott Medal the year that it came out, and it's called Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. So that's one of my very favorite picture books, and by one of my very favorite authors and illustrators, William Steig. So if you don't know William Steig's work, I highly recommend you go look for some books for him, buy him in your library.
Advice do you have for young writers or illustrators?
So the best advice I have is going to sound really simple, but I think it's a really good way. It's a really good sort of practice to live by. And the best thing you can do if there's something that you love to do, whether it's drawing or or writing or sports or whatever it is that you love to do, is just to keep doing it. So I know that as we're growing up, we encounter all these different things and we want to try different things, and but the best thing you can do is, if you want to get really really good at something, is to stick with it, and stick with that thing. You can still experiment and enjoy other things in life, but to not give up on that one thing, and you will only get better. And every year goes by, I promise you will only get better. For me, I've always been drawing, and I've been writing, for the last 15 years or so. But the important thing is just to keep doing it and keep practicing and keep learning about it and trying, and you will only continue to get better. So lots of practice and dedication, and you will excel.
Tell us about a project you were working on.
Sure. So I am working on a lot of different things in different sort of stages. So I'm working on two different picture books that have already been written, and now I'm drawing the pictures. And I'm also working on another picture book that I'm writing, and I'm just drawing some sketches for. Um, but mostly it's the writing. The first two books, which I'll tell you about, are two kind of different picture books. One is another picture book biography, like Hello Neighbor, about Mr. Rogers. This one is called, well, it doesn't have a title yet even, but it is about a musician, one of my very favorite musical artists. His name is David Bowie, and he made a lot. You know David Bowie? Good.
Yes, I
He
love
made a
it.
lot of great, mostly rock songs, and one of the most fascinating things about David Bowie is he would constantly change his musical style. So he would make different sounding albums, which, so that's one of the things that really this book focuses on, is how he was constantly changing himself and reinventing himself. And then I'm also making a book. The other book is fiction, but it's sort of based on nonfiction, and it's about owls. So I love birds, and I really love owls specifically. So I wrote a story about a girl and her mom who love, or at least the girl really loves owls, and she wants to find an owl in nature. But owls are really difficult to find. They are only most owls are only awake at night, so you rarely will see them because we're not out. We can't see as well in the dark, and we're not out doing as much exploring in the dark. So we rarely see owls because they're usually active while we're asleep. So owls are very difficult to see in nature. So this girl really wants to see an owl, but it's a very difficult challenge to see an owl. So this book is about the journey that they go on just to see an owl for the first time in the wild. So those are the two books that I'm working on, sort of at the top of my list right now.
It's time for the turbo tip.
10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Number one, what is your favorite phrase to use?
Wait, my favorite what?
Phrase to use.
Oh, my favorite phrase to use. Let me think. Oh my gosh, I don't know. I guess one of the things that I say that my kids get annoyed by is uh is when they say something that I don't like. I always say rude, rude, rude. And sometimes I will say it just as a joke, and so I find myself saying that a lot just to kind of aggravate them a little bit. But I think that probably comes up a lot, that phrase, rude, rude, rude.
Number two, what is one subject you'd like to learn more about?
Something I would like to learn more about. Wow. These are not easy questions. These are difficult questions. Let me think. I would like to learn about uh I would say maybe space exploration, or deep sea exploration, because they're both places where humans can't live. So I would be very curious about those two things, and how we might be able to explore those two very different environments.
Number 3, what's your go-to snack food?
Go-to snack food? Oh, that one's easy. I love popcorn is my favorite snack. I eat popcorn almost every day. I love it so much. So I'm a big popcorn eater.
What is your favorite book growing up? Number 4.
Yeah, I loved as a young reader, like as a picture book reader, I loved I don't know if you guys know Richard Scarry, the picture book maker. He did all these animal books, and my favorite was What Do People Do All Day? And he drew all these little animals doing their jobs, and there were all these funny little animals, like a gorilla who drove around a banana car, and a worm. You've probably seen this worm. His name's Lowly Worm, and he drives around a car that's shaped like an apple. So those books were made before I was born, but that was one of my favorites. And then as I got older, I really loved these books by Beverly Cleary. I don't know if you guys read like the Ramona books and the Henry books, and I really loved those stories growing up.
Wait, worms don't have arms.
I know, I don't know how Lowly Worm managed to drive a car. You'll have to look into that. Look into that and get back to me.
Number 5, if you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
Oh, good. That's a good one. I love to travel. My family and I, we love to travel together and go places. This past spring, we went to Japan, which was very exciting. I would love to go to, I think I would love to go to Australia. My wife Julie lived in Australia after she finished all of her studies in college. She moved to Australia for 6 months, and she's always talking about how much she loved it. And we I really want our family to go there and see all the different wildlife and the different terrain and people and places of Australia. So I think if I could go there now, that would be my top choice.
Number 6. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, flight, for sure. I think about that all the time. I would love to be able to just go up into the air and fly, um and just feel that sort of freedom of being up in the sky. And I actually have a lot of dreams about flight, just being able to kind of magically
Defying gravity.
I hate that. That would be like the
exactly.
last superpower bit.
Defying gravity.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of great things that superheroes can do, but probably flight. It would be so freeing to be able to experience that. And I think about that actually quite a bit.
Number 7, what was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Ooh, favorite cartoon. I think I loved cartoons growing up. So I probably had different favorites from different parts of my childhood, but one of my very favorites that I can remember watching was one that they remade in recent years. But when I was a kid, the first version of this cartoon was available, and it's called DuckTales. It was a Disney cartoon with like Scrooge McDuck and Donald Duck and Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and all these wild adventures and travels that they go on. And they remade DuckTales, I think, over the last few years, been recently. And the new one I love too. I loved watching that one with my kids. So DuckTales was one of my favorite cartoons growing up.
Everybody in our grade loves it.
What is your favorite rainy day activity?
My favorite rainy day activity uh has to be, uh, drawing, I think. I love to draw and just kind of, when it's rainy and can't go outside, you don't really want to be out doing things. It's just a nice way to sit around and sort of relax, but also make something and be productive. So probably I would say drawing, is my
Me too.
favorite rainy day.
Me too.
Nice.
Number 9, if you could have any 3 dinner guests, who'd they be?
Alive or not alive or both?
No rules, plus it can be a fictional character.
Okay. Well, first of all, Mr. Rogers, of course, number one. Number two would be, who would number two be? I would say, uh, oh man, probably my dad because he's no longer alive and I would like to see him again. Not probably, obviously my dad. Number two. And number three, number three be, um, maybe someone who was like had really interesting discoveries and things to say. I would say maybe like Benjamin Franklin would be an interesting person to talk to and hear all their stories and the things that they've done in their life.
And number 10, what is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
Ah, these are tough, man. Best piece of advice I was ever given. Uh,
I mean, I know mine, but I was
what's
never
yours?
given it.
What's yours?
No, there is try.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah, Yoda. Um, I think let's see, the best advice I've ever been given would be, this was something a friend of mine told me, and and this is something I actually think about a lot. And he said this was sort of later in life, I was in my 20s, and he said, never look on someone else's plate. And what he meant by that was when you're eating dinner or something, the next person beside you might have better things on their plate. They might have more food on their plate. They might have tastier items on their plate. But it's not a good thing to just keep looking at that plate and wishing you had that plate. But you should focus on what you have more and enjoy what you have, and don't think so much about what you don't have. It's kind of a bad way to live your life, to be envious of other people and also be angry because you don't have what they have. So he said, don't always look on the other person's plate when you're having a meal, and he meant, just try to be satisfied with your life and make your own life better, but don't think all the time about what the other person has. So I think about that advice all the time, actually.
That
And
is,
You were awesome. Thank you so much for doing that.
and thank you so much for spending time with us.
We can't wait to read your future book.
yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It's nice to meet you.